Hello, welcome. This is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Faithless Forrest.
I'm Leah Rollins.
And we want you to know.
And we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you are not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people committed to a life rooted in science and unfettered by supernatural beliefs.
I'll grab this next one. Today's show is about the recent presidential executive order undermining the Johnson Amendment, and we call it Christian privilege, having your tax break and eat it too. But before we dive in any further, we want to ask viewers how we sound out there. Please let us know of any audio problems and tell us the cable TV channel and cable TV system on which you're watching us.
And now we want to tell viewers about the show's sponsors.
All right. The Atheist Society of Knoxville frequently has a fun meetup at a bar or eatery. Tonight's meetup is at the not quite so new location, Flats and Taps, on 7403 Kingston Pike in Knoxville, Tennessee. That's just about a block east of Westtown Mall. When you get there to the meetup, look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table. And as Matt Delahunty at Atheist Experience says, everyone is welcome to our happy hour for food, drink, and conversation. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
The Rationalists of East Tennessee have several regular monthly meetings. The first and third Sunday mornings of the month are usually lectures with lively roundtable discussions. The second Sunday we hold the Skeptics book club. On the fourth Sunday we are mixing it up, sometimes with a potluck get-together in a member's home, which we call a reflections meeting.
All right, later in the show we will give you our websites to visit for additional details, including times and locations. So it's springtime, and that means the Freedom from Religion Secular Student Essay Contest season is upon us. Leah, why don't you read to us about their contest rewards?
The FFRF sponsors 4 essay competitions for students. All 4 FFRF essay contests offer the same awards. First place is $3,000, second place $2,000, third place $1,000, fourth place $750, fifth place $500, sixth place $400. Optional honorable mention is $200.
So, some of those will go, quite a ways towards paying off some tuition, or at least buying students some textbooks. And there's several different competitions or essay contests depending upon what your school status is. Why don't I grab this next one?
Sure.
It says, the William J. Schultz High School Essay Competition. This is open to North American high school seniors graduating in the spring of 2017 who will be attending college in the fall of 2017. The essay topic is, if there was one thing I could tell my family or a believer about why I'm a non-believer, this would be it. All right, the word limit is 350 to 500 words, and the deadline for submission is June 1st. And since we're in May here, that means there's about 3 weeks for submission on this. So, viewers, if you've got children or grandchildren who are high school seniors and are non-believers, you might want to make them aware of this and get them working on their essay. All right, you want to grab the next one?
The David Hudak Memorial Freethinking Students of Color High School Essay Competition. Open to North American high school seniors of color graduating in spring 2017, attending college in fall 2017. The topic, if there was one thing I could tell my family or a believer about why I'm a non-believer of color, this would be it. The word limit again is 350 to 500 words. Deadline June 1st, 2017, and winners will be announced in July.
So this is an obvious effort to try and bolster visibility for the students of color. They are certainly a minority within the non-belief community. All right, I'll grab this next one here. The Michael Hakeem Memorial College Essay Competition. It's for ongoing North American undergraduate college students to age 25. If you are entering college for the first time in the fall of 2017, please enter the William J. Schultz contest for college-bound high school seniors. Okay, so that was the one that we'd read previously. If you will graduate from college by the spring or summer of 2017, you must, or you're eligible to enter this contest. If you're an undergraduate student ages 25 to 30, you must enter the older student contest. That'll come up next. All right, so the topic for this college essay is, my morals do not come from God. They come from, and they want you to fill that out with 450 to 650 words. The deadline is July 1st, so you've got an extra month on this one. Winners will be announced in August, and I guess it says please look online for their application form. And that goes with all of these. The Freedom from Religion website has an application form. You want to grab the last one?
Mm-hmm. The Brian Bolton Graduate, quotation mark, older student essay contest, open to North American graduate students up to age 30 or to undergraduate students age 25 to 30. You're also eligible to enter this contest if you will graduate by spring or summer of 2017. And the topic is why religious liberty shouldn't mean the right to impose your religion on others. The word limit is 600 to 750 words. The deadline, July 15th, 2017. And winners will be announced in September.
All righty. You can find these rules at the Freedom from Religion website, ffrf.org. Look for the link that says Outreach, and then underneath that is the sublink that says Student Essay Contests. Okay. I think we're ready to start talking about our main program today. Viewers will remember that last week we spoke about the National Day of Reason, which is the secular community's pushback against the religious encroachment or theft of by religious organizations or persons of our government resources. Last Thursday, the President signed an executive order about which he spoke at the National Day of Prayer breakfast, saying, "That is why I will get rid of and totally destroy the Johnson Amendment and allow our representatives of faith to speak freely and without fear of retribution. I will do that." So he was signing an executive order that day giving preferences to undermine this Johnson Amendment. And right away, the Freedom from Religion Foundation has filed suit. And if the technology is with us, we hope to call and speak to Laurie Gaylor at Freedom from Religion about their suit. So let me see if I can make the technology work here. All right. Viewers, in a mere moments, we hope to be speaking with Laurie Gaylor. Hello, Annie. All right.
Hi.
I've pushed the speaker button here. Are you hearing us okay?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And camera operator, are you hearing Annie okay? All right. We have a thumbs up. So the viewers should be hearing us as well. Annie, thank you for being with us here today. And we want to talk about your pushback over the President's executive order.
Sure.
And of course, although we've mentioned Freedom from Religion Foundation on the show before, we must assume there are some new viewers. And maybe we could ask you to explain FFRF for our viewers as we launch into this.
Sure. The Freedom from Religion Foundation is a nationwide membership organization of freethinkers, mainly atheists and agnostics, and we work to keep religion out of government. And we were started nationally in 1978, and we have our upcoming 40th anniversary convention, And we have about 7 attorneys at this point now, and we have about a dozen lawsuits going at any given time. But we try to end violations by educating public officials, and when that fails, then sometimes we have to go to court.
All righty.
We have a newspaper called Freethought Today, and that keeps members current with what we do with their dues. And we have our own radio show, Freethought Radio, and we are going to be starting in the fall a TV show. And so we'll give you a little competition.
All righty.
And
our time slot is...
You've been there all these years.
Sure enough. Our time slot is Tuesday late afternoons. What's your time slot going to be?
We don't know yet.
All right.
We will try. We won't do it at the same time. Don't worry.
Yeah. Odds are in our favor not to have an overlap on that. But okay, that's great. Yeah, I first became aware of Freedom from Religion Foundation when Dan Barker came to visit us here at the Rationalists of East Tennessee and performed some of his marvelous piano works. And I bought some of his audio CDs. And those are remarkable because they help give me insight into his worldview, because he comes to non-belief from a background where he was a minister before. What's your story?
Well, I don't have the dramatic story, but I guess I was luckier than Dan, who was brought up in a fundamentalist household, although his parents were very nice. I am a third-generation freethinker on my mother's side of the family, and both my folks felt very strongly that children should be allowed to grow up unmolested by religious dogma, and when we were old enough to think for ourselves, we could make up our own minds. And they felt that you have to respect children's rights. And I think it's almost, in some cases, borderline abuse to take a very small child and instill in them concepts that create neuroses, such as fear of hellfire, original sin, guilt, shame. And so I grew up free from that, and I think I was very lucky.
All righty. Well, that's great. Okay. So, of course, today's call is motivated by the events of last Thursday. And you guys have filed some kind of suit already on that. How shall we explain that to the viewers?
Well, I think a lot of the viewers would have followed the news on Thursday, May 4th, that it was the National Day of Prayer, unfortunately, which we think is unconstitutional. And in order to propitiate the religious right, President Trump had assembled a bunch of nuns and priests and evangelists and given them a dinner on Wednesday and then brought them into the Rose Garden on Thursday to make his big announcement, an executive order for so-called religious liberty. And in that order, Trump made repeated statements that clearly communicated to churches that they can now endorse political candidates from the pulpit, and that Trump has told the Internal Revenue Service that they cannot investigate violations of the Johnson Amendment, the law that says that all nonprofits, all tax exempts, are prohibited from electioneering. And so that executive order was very badly worded, but we felt that it was clear enough that he was signaling to churches that the law does not apply to them. And so we already had a federal lawsuit more or less readied because he had started. There were hints of this in February, and so we filed suit the same day that he announced that executive order.
All right, let's talk briefly about the Johnson Amendment. So the Johnson Amendment is legislation that has been passed by Congress, signed by a past president. It's the law of the land, right?
Yes.
And
under the Johnson Amendment, no tax-exempt nonprofit can use tax-exempt property or money or resources for political aims because it's a tax subsidy. It's a public subsidy, really, that other taxpayers are paying more because tax-exempt groups pay less. And the contract is that tax-exempt groups are doing something for charity, whether it's educational charity, like FFRF, or whether it's a school or a hospital. You're not supposed to misuse your donations for political purposes.
All righty. And so for the sake of viewers, the way I would say this is that viewers, if you're like me and you pay taxes on every dollar you earn, when you then want to make political speech in the form of contributions, this is on after-tax dollars. But the churches are getting money without tax, as well as I think the people who contribute to those churches may be doing so and getting a tax benefit. So they're contributing with, so to speak, pre-tax dollars. Am I stating that fairly?
Yeah, well, I think everybody who's given money to a candidate knows that this, when you give money, something will come up on the website or in the brochure that says this is not deductible. You're giving outright, there's no charity involved. You're giving for a political purpose, and you cannot exempt that from your taxes.
And
so if they're allowing churches to get around the law, they would clearly be able to use the machinery of the church or the pulpit in some way to promote a political candidate, and that's not fair. And Trump issued this executive order, and he only exempted churches from following the law. And so the Freedom from Religion Foundation is a 501c3 tax-exempt entity, too. So we're being treated differentially. The churches are preferentially being set apart, and we're having to follow the same rules as the other tax-exempts, and we're being penalized, therefore. So that gives us injury, that gives us standing to go to court.
All righty.
And that's what we did.
That's kind of what I was going to ask, is what is going to be your standing here, because that's, of course, how the courts often try to avoid facing this issue when we bring suit. So your standing will be that you're a 501c3 as well, but you're being discriminatorily treated by this executive order.
Yeah, and during this Rose Garden pandering speech, President Trump said, "This executive order directs the IRS not to unfairly target churches and religious organizations for political speech." I'm quoting him directly. Trump said, "No one should be censoring sermons or targeting pastors. In America, we do not fear people speaking freely from the pulpit. We embrace it. The financial threat against the faith community is over. You're now in a position where you can say whatever you want to say." So Trump is saying to churches, you don't have to obey the law, and he's intimidating the IRS from enforcing that law. So we think this is very damaging, especially with the 2018 elections coming up, which are so much hinges on those. And so we have filed a very thorough lawsuit in which we also enumerate a lot of what Trump has been saying when he ran for president and since he's been president, where he's saying, I'm going to overturn the Johnson Amendment, and it's unfair, and it's muzzling speech. So I think it makes it very clear what the intent of the executive order is, even though the executive order is very badly worded.
All right, now, help me and viewers. You guys have previously litigated situations where the IRS was giving a free pass to religious organizations interfering in elections. Have you not?
Yeah, that's right, Forrest. We sued the IRS in 2014 when it was widely reported by just about everybody that there hadn't been any church investigations. They didn't have the appropriate person who was authorized to commence them. They hadn't filled that position, and they hadn't been doing them. And so we went to court to force the IRS to enforce the law. And when they were able to show us that they had filled that position, and they even divulged about 99 investigations that were ongoing against electioneering by churches, then we dropped the lawsuit. But we said we'll be back if it looks like you go back to not enforcing the law. So in a sense, we're kind of resuming that lawsuit.
All righty.
Because why would the IRS want to enforce the law when they've got the president telling them you can't? They're being put in an untenable position.
Yes, an employee whose paycheck comes from the executive branch is now being told to violate the law.
Right, and part of our lawsuit also points out that Trump is directing the IRS to do something and that he lacks the power to do that. There isn't any implied power that the president has to selectively enforce a legitimate statute based on religion. Trump doesn't really, as president, have the power to issue this executive order. So he's gone beyond the powers of the president. So we want a ruling on that as well.
All righty. And so when we hear words like you file suit, I assume this is done in something like a federal court jurisdiction. How does that work? You don't just walk up to the Supreme Court and do this, do you?
No, you have to exhaust your legal remedies, and you start at the lowest level. So this is a federal lawsuit, and we filed it in the Western District, the U.S. District of Wisconsin. And actually, the courthouse is a couple blocks away from where we are in downtown Madison, Wisconsin. And mostly today, people file electronically. So we filed this lawsuit in federal court, and you may not get further. We don't know. If, for example, we can force the Trump administration to come forward and agree that they don't have the power to issue an executive order like this, and that the IRS comes forward and says we are enforcing the law, then we'll be glad to drop the lawsuit again. But we felt that without this lawsuit, it was clearly going to be giving a green light to churches to election year. And there is a concerted movement by the Fundamentalist Alliance Defending Freedom to urge pastors to endorse from the pulpit, and they've been doing this for years. And so too much is at stake. And actually, there are statistics showing, studies after studies showing, that most churches are perfectly content. They like this law. They don't want to be involved in politics. They realize it would be highly divisive to their congregation. And it's 80% or more of Americans say that pastors shouldn't be endorsing from the pulpit. So the drive for this is from a very special, a narrow special interest of politically active fundamentalists who want Trump to do this for them. And he is pandering to them, and this is one of his big promises when he was running for president in order to get their endorsements. People like Jerry Falwell Jr., for example, then came forward and endorsed him based in part on his promise to overturn the Johnson Amendment. But it's something that's not broken. It doesn't need to be fixed. Most Americans are very happy with it. Most churches are happy with it. Everybody sees the logic. It's being enforced even-handedly. No pastors are going to jail, which is a ridiculous accusation that Trump made. There are very few prosecutions that end in any kind of penalty. There was like one church years ago that lost its tax exemption temporarily. But it gives the IRS some teeth. They can make warnings. They can rein in churches that are being abusive, that are abusing their public trust and this tax-exempt donation that is made available to them through this special privilege. It's not a right. It's a privilege to have tax exemption.
Yeah, that's it. The thing that's funny to me that we shouldn't let them get away with saying that, oh, well, their rights are being infringed. It's actually a privilege they have, which is to get revenue and use it for church activities that is tax-free. You know, I don't have that privilege for my personal life.
No, and the other problem, the other huge problem with churches engaging in politicking as compared to any other tax-exempt group is that they are exempted from filing tax returns with the Internal Revenue Service that all other 501c3 entities have to file, including the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And if you don't file them, you can lose your tax exemption, and you can be penalized tens of thousands of dollars, even personally, as well as an organization. So Dan Barker and I, as co-presidents, have our personal finances at stake if we don't obey the law and file our Form 990 every year. And this is an onerous, over 31-page for us document that basically tells the IRS and the public, because it goes public, what we do with our money to prove that we deserve tax exemption. Churches are automatically exempted from filing Form 990s. And so what that means is that if they can then be political and they're not filing any tax returns, there's absolutely no accountability. There is no transparency, and I think political churches would become political wards. And you could siphon money launder through churches. And people could give huge amounts of tax-exempt dollars to churches, which could then turn around and use it for political endorsement and political purposes. And how would you ever get to the bottom of it when they do not have to account for their tax-exempt dollars? So it's a huge problem.
Annie, this is Leah, Forrest's co-host. I was wondering if there is legislation being written or has already been written to negate the Johnson Amendment?
Yes, there's more than one bill that's floating there in Congress, and this is also partly because in response to Trump's promise to overturn the Johnson Amendment, they've been introduced since early in his term. And there was actually a hearing by a subcommittee on Thursday, and the Freedom from Religion Foundation has submitted written testimony about it, about how dangerous it is and how undesirable. So aside from the executive order, there is also the threat of legislation being passed by Congress or even being put in the budget later in the year and kind of passing without any debate. So there's a lot of threat here.
Well,
and it's important for the public to speak up and contact their members of Congress and say they like things just the way they are.
If they pass this bill, what happens to your lawsuit?
Well, it might be possible to include the legislation in our lawsuit, because it would be unconstitutional on its face if they pass a bill that exempts churches only. But if they pass a bill that exempts all tax exempts, then we would not have standing to sue.
Because it would then be no longer discriminatory. It's the discriminatory nature of singling out churches or religious organizations that is the constitutional issue.
Yeah, but it would be a huge financial problem for our nation.
Oh, I understand that. I was merely addressing the legal issue, not the moral issue, or how ill-advised it is to point our nation in the direction that Europe used to have during the time of its religious wars.
And there might still be standing to sue because they don't fill out a Form 990. The churches are not filing their tax return. And we are pursuing that with, we have everything in step to take another lawsuit against the Form 990 discrimination. But we need the IRS to go after the entity that we've created before the courts are going to say we have standing. So we're getting around to that whole issue eventually, but all bets are off. But I do not think that Congress has really had a lot of interest in passing a repeal of the Johnson Amendment. They've been introducing this for some years, and there's an evangelical outfit that has been lobbying for it, but the polls are showing that churches and Americans like the Johnson Amendment. And so I'm not sure that this is going to go anywhere, but we don't think that we can be complacent. It's very important for people to speak out against the attempts to repeal the Johnson Amendment, and to speak out against what President Trump has done in really muddying the waters and making it look like churches and pastors are being picked on and victimized and thrown in jail. And this is absolutely rubbish.
All righty. Well, I think we've kind of covered most of this, and we're a little more than halfway through our program. You're welcome to talk with us further, but if you have things to do, we can take it from here.
All right. Well, if anybody wants to read our complaint, which is very educational,
all right,
you can go to the Freedom from Religion Foundation website and look for the news link, and there's a news release. There's a drop-down, and just choose the news release and look for the press release from last week. And there's a hyperlink, and it really is pretty good reading, and people who are interested would be, I think, have their eyes opened by all of the remarks that Trump has made consistently about repealing the Johnson Amendment.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for sharing some time with us today. And
well, thank you, Forrest and Leah.
And we
nice to talk with you.
Nice to talk with you.
All right. We look forward to further updates on this as it progresses. We'll keep our ear to the ground.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Let's say goodbye for now.
Bye-bye.
All righty. Well, let's see if we can find our mid-program break material here, and then you and I will have some further conversation after this. All right. I found the mid-program break here. I'll grab the first part.
Okay.
In case you're just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is funded jointly by them and by individual contributions.
Shows are live most every Tuesday from 5 to 5:55 p.m. Eastern Time on Knoxville Community Access Television Channel 12 or Channel 194, depending on your local cable network. Tell your out-of-town friends to see us streaming online at ctvknox.org.
Today's show is live. It's May 9th, I believe, 2017, and you can call in on the number on our screen and speak with us. We're going to take a short video break from our sponsors, assuming the technology is with us. Make it so.
Do you find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org. If you live in or around the Knoxville area and are questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else, well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun.
All right, and it looks like we're back. Okay, the Atheist Society of Knoxville, or ASK, meets 1 or 2 times a week. We have meetups for food, fun, drink, and conversation. Find us online at KNOX Atheist, that's I better not try and spell it, atheist.org. The purpose of ASK is to supply a venue for community camaraderie and outreach to atheists, agnostic, freethinkers, and other like-minded persons in the East Tennessee area. Our Tuesday meeting is going on right now at this somewhat new location, Flats and Taps on Kingston Pike, just east of Westtown Mall.
The second Sunday of most month is the Rationalists of East Tennessee Skeptics Book Club. The title of the next book is The Serengeti Rules, The Quest to Discover How Life Works and Why It Matters. The author is Sean Carroll. The meeting is at Sunday, May 14th at 2 p.m. The public is invited to participate, and you need not have read the book to attend, but of course it helps. Visit rationalist.org to find the rest of the calendar of books, and join us at our location at Books A Million, 8513 Kingston Pike, Knoxville, Tennessee.
This third Sunday of May is another RA team meeting, and it will feature a DVD presentation from the Skeptics Society that was distinguished lecture series. It's by physicist Leonard, oh my goodness, that name is going to hurt me if I try to pronounce it.
Mollendahl.
Yeah, all right. You are braver than I.
I am very brave.
All right, and the title is Subliminal, How Your Unconscious Mind Rules Your Behavior. From the best-selling author of The Drunkard's Walk and co-author of The Grand Design with Stephen Hawking and War of the World Views with, it's Deepak Chopra, is that his name?
Chopra.
Yeah. Comes a fascinating, illuminating examination of the profound ways in which the unconscious mind shapes our lives. Every aspect of our mental lives plays out in two versions, one conscious and of which we're constantly aware, and the other unconscious, which remains hidden from us. Over the past 2 decades, researchers have developed remarkable new tools for probing the unconscious or subliminal workings of the mind. This explosion of research has led to a sea change in our understanding of how the mind affects the way we live. As a result, scientists are becoming increasingly convinced that how we experience the world, our perceptions, behavior, memory, and social judgment is largely driven by the mind's subliminal processes and not by the conscious ones, as we have long believed. I must admit, I find that a little challenging to believe. I will be going to that program with a skeptical mind myself.
I'll be there with you.
All righty. Well, so the Freedom from Religion Foundation is not the only one to respond to Trump's executive order. The Satanic Temple also responded, and I get their newsletter, and I contacted them and got permission to share some of the contents of their newsletter with viewers. Leah, why don't you read a paragraph there and we'll discuss it.
It starts on his first presidential National Day of Prayer, May 4th, 2017, Donald Trump signed an executive order, which he may or may not have read, penned by an unknown author, hailed as a bold expansion of religious liberty. The order, presaged by the president's national prayer breakfast rhetoric, signals his administration's dedication to breaking down barriers of separation between church and state, elevating religious organizations as the entitled beneficiaries of unique exceptions and stunning privileges. All
righty. So from our previous discussion, the exception is that they don't have to file the 999 form for tax reporting at the end of the year. And look, we've got a phone call. All righty. Hello, caller. This is Freethought Forum TV. We don't have a call screener today, so can you give us a name or a nickname and tell us where you're calling from?
It's Charles from Central Illinois.
Hello, Charles. All right. Thank you for reporting in. Charles is our field reporter from Central Illinois. Do you have a comment, question, or a report?
My question is now that church in Atlanta, I think it is, or Alabama, now has its own police force, what exact laws are they going to be enforcing?
That's a very good question.
All right, yeah, man. So let's see. Now they can churches can engage in political activity, and then in Alabama they can have police forces. Wow. That raises the stakes even more.
Yes, and the overall tone of what some of the things that are coming out of the extreme religious right seeming very edging into the extreme hysteria bit. I see a lot of them howling and screaming about Obama action and Johnson's amendment. Well, there's a damn train.
All right.
We're stomping on their place in society, but I don't see them making much statements on how Donald Trump's son-in-law, sister, was selling access to the United States visa program for $500,000 a pop.
Yeah, it does seem like there's a little bit of missing oversight going on. You raised the issue about the complaints that we hear religious people making, that they're so persecuted. Laurie Gaylor spoke about how there was allegations that pastors were put in jail, and there is no such thing that has happened. But as one of the popular Facebook memes says, a special privilege would be something like not paying taxes, and that's what the religious organizations have become. Well, they view themselves as entitled to, no matter what they're doing.
It's kind of like having your cake and eating it too.
You may have seen our title slide today.
Yes, and the whole problem with a lot of it seems to be you can count on them ignoring how many times pastors and preachers and so forth have been caught, double dipping into their stuff and committing sins at the same time. So, as Bob Heinlein once said in one of his books, belief is for the congregation, not the clergy.
That might be revolt in something like 2114 or something like that. There was a little novel-length story.
Against a theocratic state in the United States?
Yeah, and
I think that was, if this too goes on.
Okay. He may have written more than once on the subject, but as I say, there was like a novel-length one, Revolt in, and then there's a date, and it's somewhere in the 21st century, or sorry, 22nd century. It was one of the first things I ever read by him, and I enjoyed it. And I kind of think more people should read that one. All right. Well, Charles, did you have any more?
Just Donald Trump is beginning to remind me more of a certain Gaylor and taking opportunities of perceived inequities in the name of Adolf Hitler.
Well, the charge of fascism has been raised before, during, and after the campaign. The word demagogue is used, demagoguery. And
the thing that gets me is that he still acts like he's on the campaign trail. Okay? Ensuring that his base support is still solidly behind him.
Well, I guess what bothered me was the willingness to play the part of the victim, while then him, in reality, turning the tables and victimizing others and rolling back civil protections for minorities of all kinds. All right?
Bluntly lying about what his achievements are, or completely ignoring questions like when he questioned why Obama had to use all these executive orders, when in fact as a good president he wouldn't have to, and how many executive orders he has issued in the first 100 days.
Yeah. All righty. Well, Charles,
okay.
we got a little bit of the Satanic Temple newsletter to discuss here. Why don't we ask you to listen in as we do that, and we'll talk to you another day.
Okay.
Thanks for reporting in.
Bye.
All righty. So this paragraph here, I thought bears some discussion here. You want to read that paragraph that begins Our Republic?
Our republic was formed on the basis that freedom is not a gift from government, but that freedom is a gift from God. Among those freedoms is the right to worship according to our own beliefs. That is why I will get rid of and totally destroy the Johnson Amendment and allow our representatives of faith to speak freely and without fear of retribution. I will do that. Remember, this is a quote from President Trump.
Yeah, and I think it was his speech at the
Prayer breakfast.
prayer breakfast. So this phrase here, that freedom is a gift from, it is not a gift from government, but that freedom is a gift from God, is, if not word for word, at least has high parallel structure with a bill that is in the Tennessee legislature right now. There's a House bill and a Senate bill where they're trying to claim things, well, that freedom is not a gift of government. You know, for viewers out there, I would remind people that, you know, the Hebrew Bible has a recipe in there for how the Hebrews were allowed to own slaves, whereas our Constitution, our government document, has the complete prohibition against involuntary servitude, slavery. So I'm going to say right here in our own national experience that we're doing much better than this assertion here, and we're doing much better than what the Hebrew Bible offered in terms of guarantees for freedoms. All righty. So let's see what else. Why don't we read this paragraph as well?
The pandering promise.
Yeah.
This pandering promise was clearly meant as but a partial reimbursement to the hordes of reliably hypocritical evangelic family values lobbyists who, while still actively bemoaning the spiritual wound that former President Clinton's illicit love affair brought upon the dignity of this great nation, were nonetheless still able to assemble their voters to find Christ's emissary in a pussy-grabbing, self-obsessed plutocrat, twice divorced.
Twice divorced. So, you know, what we have here is, you know, so they're explicitly pointing out how previous presidents were targeted, and President Clinton was impeached over statements he made about his private life, and as if it was a great moral catastrophe. And then, you know, the Christian emissaries who were having breakfast with Donald Trump,
forgive him all his sins.
Look the other way. Yep. All righty. Let's see. So here's a summary again about the Johnson Amendment. Why don't I grab a portion of this? The Johnson Amendment is named after then Senator Lyndon Johnson and passed Congress in 1954. It is a federal law that prohibits tax-exempt organizations, including the religious, from directly or indirectly participating in or intervening in any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for elective public office, and for religious tax-exempt organizations which are not required to file a tax return form 990. I said 999 earlier, so apparently it's 990. Unlike charities and other nonprofits, such as educational nonprofits, who must file that form. This arrangement is the only stipulation in return for which they receive an enormous subsidy, estimated by the Washington Post in 2013 to be an annual amount of about $82.5 billion. So that's what's subsidizing the religious community's tax-free existence. So the first important intended effect of the Johnson Amendment is that the American taxpayer does not subsidize the lobbying and funding of certain political parties. If religious organizations continue to withhold hundreds of thousands of dollars each year from the community, that money should not be used by politicians attempting to gain favor with a certain segment of the population. All righty, you want to read what they say here?
Secondly, the inevitable outcome of allowing endorsements would be for wealthy political donors to filter their money through churches to gain further tax deductions. The pulpit would become simply a money filtering mechanism akin to money laundering for partisan politics.
So, as part of the Protestant Reformation, was this idea of protesting against how the Catholic Church was taking money, selling indulgences, and this was a form of income for them. Churches, if the Johnson Amendment is abolished, churches could be setting themselves up to practically extort money out of their wealthy parishioners, saying, don't you want us to be, doing God's work, and you better give us money so we can do it, because it'll go farther if you send it through us. And almost implying that, we want to make sure that you're supporting the right people, and you will do so by funneling it through us so that we have an accounting of it.
Well, not only the parishioners would be coerced, but entities outside the churches, businesses, other political parties, other organizations could filter their money through, and so they could get a lot more money than just milk their parishioners for it.
And because there is no visibility into it, you can't know how they're using it. I think it may have been a Pew Research article that seemed to imply that most churches spend, something like less than 5% of their income on doing something that is legitimately charitable work, like feeding the poor. They spend money sending people off on missions to go preach their gospel, which might then incidentally involve doing something like helping the poor, but they're sending missionaries primarily as a way to propagate their ideas and gain membership for their church. So we've got about a minute left here. Did you have anything, has anything caught your eye, or as we were speaking, that you care to comment on? I've done a lot of talking here today.
That's okay. I'm impressed with how blunt the Satanic Temple is in their article. Didn't mince any words. I like that. They're attempting to set themselves up, much like the Freedom from Religion Foundation, to be able to litigate where necessary church-state separation violations. And I believe they're going to have the first Satanic Temple artifact placed on some kind of a courthouse lawn in Minnesota, I think sometime this month or next. I think it's a veterans memorial.
Yeah, it's a little town in Minnesota whose name won't come to me right now. But I'm from Minnesota, and next time I go back, I may have to go visit their little monument. Well, we're at a minute to go here before ending time, and it's time we start wrapping things up. You want to grab the first?
Sure. Get out your pen and paper. This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee.
You can give us feedback by voice at 865-272-9060 or by email freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.
You can see this show on Tuesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on this Knoxville station and online at ctvknox.org.
The opinions expressed on this show are of the hosts and guests and not any official opinion of ASK or RET. We'd like to thank Rev for technical support. I want to thank Leah for hosting today on a moment's notice, and to all of our callers.
The opinions, I've already, sorry, skip down. Nuns, those who identify with no religion.
I think we just have to say, you're not alone.